with Vice President Kamala Harris now taking a narrow lead in the national vote against former President Donald Trump. I wanted to take a look at Kamala Harris's best case scenario in this November's general election. Now, it would be a no-brainer that for Kamala Harris's safe states, she would carry Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii, as well as New York, D.C., Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island by safe margins. Additionally, the states of Illinois, as well as Maine's 1st District, will also be considered safe for this election video for Kamala Harris's safe states. As well as that on Donald Trump's side, we have the states of Idaho, Utah, Wyoming, the Dakotas, Montana, Nebraska's at-large 1st and 3rd districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and Montana, and Missouri, These are all no-brainer states for Donald Trump in his best-case scenario, that is being for Kamala Harris. Now I'm going to give the states of Alaska and South Carolina away to Donald Trump in the likely column. Even for Kamala Harris's best case scenario, those states are not in contention. Kamala Harris in her best case scenario should pick off Colorado, New Mexico, and Virginia by safe margins. These were all states that voted for Joe Biden by double digits in 2020. No surprise there. Additionally, Maine's at-large vote, New Hampshire, and Minnesota, where her running mate Tim Walz is from. These are areas that all voted for Joe Biden by between 7 to 9%. Not much of a surprise, all three of those areas gonna go for Kamala Harris here by likely margins. With that in mind, Kamala Harris is just 45 electoral votes away from the presidency, and she'll gain another electoral vote from Nebraska's 2nd District, a district that voted for Biden by roughly 7 in a very urban, Omaha-based region of the United States. Now, even for a best case for Kamala Harris, Trump will still have his fair share of the likely states, excluding the states of Alaska and South Carolina. He should also carry the states of Iowa and Ohio by likely margins. This is not much of a surprise because back in 2020, he was able to carry both those states by about 8%, despite the fact that both those states were expected to be more competitive than those margins. Back in 2016, Trump carried them by about the identical margin as he carried those states back in 2020, where in 2016 he was able to do very well in some of these areas. If you go to, for example, the state of Iowa, you can see just how much some of these counties trended towards the Republican Party. And even in 2020, he was actually able to overperform in some of the rural areas in the state of Iowa, although Biden did do better in some of the urban areas, as well as that in the state of Ohio. Again, Biden did make slight improvements around Franklin County as well as Hamilton County, but Trump really rounded up in some of the rural areas. It's going to be pretty much inconceivable for Kamala Harris to be able to win either of those states. Additionally, here, Maine's 2nd District, a very working class, very rural district. This fits the profile of a place where Donald Trump is expected to do well. Now, I'm also going to give here the states of Florida and Texas here to Donald Trump by a lead margin. Now, in the best case scenario, these states could certainly tighten. However, Trump is obviously going to carry both those states. That is not much of a surprise. Both of those states voted for Donald Trump in the state of Texas by 5.6 and the state of Florida by 3.3. Although those may seem like narrow margins, it's essentially inconceivable right now that Kamala Harris can make significant enough inroads in either of those states to end up winning them or make them within a fraction of 1%. In 2020, Democrats essentially invested a heavy sum into the state of Texas, hoping to make the state razor thin or at least somewhat in play. However, Joe Biden still lost the state by more than 5 and lost in Rio Grande Valley like essentially no Democrat has ever done before. Now, of course, Donald Trump did not do very well in some of these suburban areas, especially Denton, Tarrant, and Collin County around the Dallas suburbs, as well as that in some of the areas around Harris County, as well as San Antonio. However, again, there's no way Kamala Harris could win this state. Additionally, in the state of Florida, where Democrats really dropped the ball in 2020 when Joe Biden only carried the Miami-Dade County by 7, while Democrats historically carried the county by anywhere between 20 and 35 points. And in 2022, where Marco Rubio and Ron DeSantis, the two Republican candidates for Senate and governor respectively, won by huge margins. Now it's the state of Florida is really not much in play for the Democratic Party as it was maybe a decade ago. Now for some of Kamala Harris's lead states here, I'm going to start with the state of Nevada. Nevada was a state that voted for Joe Biden in 2020. If you go to Nevada polling right now, Harris has a 0.6% lead, though I'm a bit curious how they got this average, considering that Harris is down in every single poll except two that has her at even and one that has her up by 2%. I'm not sure how they got this number. Anyways, polling does not look too good for Kamala Harris. However, in 2020, Biden was able to carry the state. And in a best case scenario, again, not a reasonable case scenario, in a best case scenario, I'd still give the state to Kamala Harris here by a lead margin, just because there's some type of argument that Kamala Harris could do pretty well with Hispanics, with some of these minority voters, and drive up some of these turnout. Again, I'm not super sure either way, but right now, in my general prediction, does have Trump winning the state of Nevada. However, in the best case scenario for Kamala Harris, of course she can end up driving up turnout in Clark County, and she could definitely still end up winning the state. We're going to now go to the state of Arizona here, where Joe Biden was able to win the state by 0.3%. Polling had Joe Biden essentially down in the state by several points, and was not really in contention for Joe Biden. However, some of the more recent polls in Arizona between Harris and Trump does show this race a bit tightening by a little bit. If you show some of these polls here, you can see that it's kind of a spread. Harris is still significantly, down against Trump in a couple of these polls. However, this was still miles better than when Joe Biden was on a ticket, and Harris is beginning to lead a little bit in some of the more recent polls. Now, I still am a bit, reluctant to give the state to Kamala Harris outright. However, the best case scenario, of course, Kamala Harris could win the state. One thing I want to note out, though, is that the state is about 2/3 of the population of the state of Arizona does reside in Maricopa County. This is one of the most moderate counties in the United States and the most fast-growing county in the United States of America. There's a very much moderate type of population in Maricopa County where there's a lot of kind of McCain Republicans that are definitely willing to vote both ways. Some of those voters might actually have voted for Joe Biden because he was considered a moderate, but someone like Kamala Harris may be too liberal to end up winning the state of Arizona in a general election. Nevertheless, in a best case scenario, especially because of the fact that Joe Biden was able to win the state in 2024, in a best case, of course, I'll still give the state to Kamala Harris. Now going to the state of Georgia. Georgia was one of the big tests in 2020 for Biden when he was able to win the state. It was some huge political news for Democrats, as this was the first time in about 30 years, dating back to 1992, the first time Democrats had won the state of Georgia on the presidential level. Now, polling still has Donald Trump up a little bit in the state of Georgia, and if you look at the polls specifically one by one, you can see that Kamala Harris was leading in just one of the many polls taken in Georgia, and that one was a Democratic intern, and she was only winning by 1%. I still think that Trump is definitely favored in the state of Georgia in a normal case scenario, especially because I am doubtful that Kamala Harris could actually turn out good numbers in areas like Gwinnett County or Cobb County, where there's a very significant white college-educated population that is present in some of those regions. I think that Kamala Harris personally could drive up the minority turnout, but those white working class voters definitely preferred Biden to Kamala Harris, and the only reason they voted blue was because they really resented Trump. However, Harris is a bit too liberal in my opinion to win some of these areas, by at least the margin that Joe Biden did back in 2020. Nevertheless, in the best case scenario, can Kamala Harris win the state of Georgia, especially when Joe Biden had already won the state back in 2020? Absolutely. So Georgia right now in the total Democratic column. Now we go to the state of North Carolina here. In the state of North Carolina, by the way, if you look at the Electoral College vote right now, Kamala Harris already at 259 Electoral College votes. All she needs is one of the states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, or North Carolina, or she will get the state of Wisconsin and get 269 if Trump sweeps all three of the remaining states. First off, in the state of North Carolina here, this was a state that Joe Biden lost in the 2020 election. Additionally, right now, polling again doesn't look too friendly towards the Democratic Party. I'm just going to pull up the state of North Carolina here, where again, we don't have a specific average. However, again, Trump is still consistently leading over Kamala Harris in the state of North Carolina. Notably, even in the Democratic intern, Roy Cooper, the Democratic governor of the state, was still polling 4 points behind Donald Trump, suggesting the fact that, simply speaking, North Carolina is still a state that favors Donald Trump. In the best case scenario, could Harris win it? Now, I believe that there are a couple hurdles that Kamala Harris would have to confront. The first being that she's definitely not going to do as well as Joe Biden did in some of these excerpts around Charlotte or around Raleigh. I believe that she could do very well in some of the city areas with a minority presence where she's able to drive up turnout. However, I'm really doubtful that she's able to do well in the white working class suburbs. Additionally, we see some bleeding in the Democratic areas in some of these rural areas down here, as well as the majority black district up over here, North Carolina's 1st district, a lot of farmers in this part of the district as well, and a lot of these African American populations. Again, I'm still doubtful if Democrats could actually win the state of North Carolina, even in a best case scenario, considering the fact that Joe Biden did not win the state back in 2020, despite the fact that Democrats have fundraised tens of millions of dollars into the state and they just poured it in, and it still wasn't enough. Kamala Harris is certainly not focusing much on the state, which means North Carolina is still in the tilt Republican column, even in a best case scenario. Now we go to the final 3 bosses up here: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris needs either Michigan or Pennsylvania to win, while if Trump wants to win outright, he definitely needs all 3 of these states, which does seem unlikely in a best case scenario. First up, in the state of Wisconsin. Essentially, Kamala Harris has been doing a bit better in some of the Wisconsin polling more recently. She's up by about 3.3%. Again, I'm doubtful of these numbers, but still, Kamala Harris right now, in some of the polls that have been taken, Kamala Harris is leading. Why is she leading by 9? I honestly have no clue, but still she's leading, and I'm just going to take it at face value, suggesting that she could end up certainly winning the state. Now, of course, she's not going to win the state by 9, even in the best case scenario. Biden was up in the state by like 8 or 9, and he ended up winning the state by just 0.63%. Kamala Harris's strength could be to turn out Democrats again from Madison and Milwaukee, which is what every Democrat needs to win the state of Wisconsin. Her weakness could be the wild counties, where she's not going to get those white working class voters or some of these white suburbanites, especially in an area like Waukesha, which is generally quite wealthy, but, consistently relatively Republicans on the presidential as well as the Senate and governor's level. I'm doubtful she could do very well here, but I think that she could certainly end up turning out a lot of these minority voters in Dade County as well as Milwaukee County, and I think that she might be able to get that energy as the quote-unquote first female president of the United States, and as a result here, I'm still going to give the state of Wisconsin best case scenario to Kamala Harris here, by between a lead or tilt margin, because my boundary between lead and tilt is actually 2%, I'm going to say tilt right now. With Kamala Harris now at 269 Electoral College votes, one shy away from the presidency, let's now go to the state of Michigan. In the state of Michigan right now, Kamala Harris maintains a 3.4% lead over Donald Trump. That is a drastic shift from where Trump was actually leading just a few weeks ago. Now, some of the more recent polls have shown Kamala Harris right now with a pretty substantial lead. Again, I would like to take these polls with a grain of salt, because I do still consider them as highly inaccurate, especially this far away from the election with so many undecideds. Especially considering the fact that Kamala Harris does have a few disadvantages compared to Joe Biden in 2020. For one thing, she's probably not going to do as well in some of these suburban counties like Kent County or Oakland County. Take Oakland County for example. This was a county that Joe Biden won by 110,000 votes, while Kamala Harris won the county. Hillary Clinton won the county back in 2016 by less than half of Joe Biden's margin. This is the type of area where Kamala Harris will probably do worse than Joe Biden by a significant margin. Nevertheless, here Kamala Harris does have a few strengths in the state of Michigan. Tim Walz, her running mate, is from the state of Minnesota, which in some ways is quite similar to the state of Michigan. Additionally, Joe Biden did have a weakness in the 2024 Democratic primaries in the state of Michigan, where there was a high uncommitted vote, especially in some of these areas in the Arab American Population Center of Wayne County, plus Washtenaw County, where there's a lot of younger voters from college campuses who are dissatisfied with Joe Biden's handling of the Israel-Hamas war. Now, someone like Kamala Harris may be able to ease some of those concerns because she is more left-wing than Joe Biden, and so these Arab American populations, she is more friendly, at least based on perception, to Palestine than Joe Biden. So there's a couple of issues there that could favor Kamala Harris. In the best case scenario, of course, Kamala Harris could win the state by a lead margin. I would not say likely because Joe Biden only won the state by 3 in an election where he was polling significantly ahead of Donald Trump. But I would say right now it would be a lead state for Kamala Harris in a best case scenario. We then go to the state of Pennsylvania, where there are a couple things that are working pretty well for Donald Trump. First of all, he got shot in the state of Pennsylvania, especially specifically speaking, Butler, Pennsylvania, right over here, about 50 miles north of Pittsburgh in this county, Butler, Pennsylvania. Additionally, Josh Shapiro, who was the governor of the state of Pennsylvania and still is, was widely considered to be the favorite to be Kamala Harris's running mate, and I'm sure a lot of Pennsylvanians are pretty disappointed by the fact that he wasn't selected. Nevertheless, in a best case scenario, especially when Kamala Harris is also doing okay in the state of Pennsylvania, in some of the more recent polls where she was initially down and now she's kind of ahead by 1.7%, you could definitely at least see in a best case scenario, especially with Harris winning in some of the more recent polls, that she could win the state of Pennsylvania here in the best case scenario by a lead margin. So what is the summary here? Well, this map looks very, very similar to the 2020 election. In fact, there's not really any differences between this map and the 2020 election results. Now, what can you actually take away from this? First off, I believe that Kamala Harris's ceiling is pretty much limited to all the states that Joe Biden won back in 2020. I believe that thinking that she could end up winning any of the states that Donald Trump ended up carrying back in 2020 is somewhat wishful thinking. Sure, she might be able to pick up North Carolina, but at this point, I really doubt it. On the other hand, though, it does mean that this election would still be closely fought. Although I still consider Donald Trump the favorite to win this election, of course, there are definitely several pathways for Kamala Harris to still win. She could win some of these Sunbelt states, or she could carry the states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and end up winning the general election. Anyways, thank you for watching today's video. Be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.